And it's Tuesday, March 31st, 2020. This is the 5-Minute Podcast Review, and this episode I've put together a bunch of podcasts, 24 actually, that I'm calling the COVID-19 Lockdown Collection. It's a list I've shared with various family and friends, some who've just discovered podcasts as a result of the lockdown, and I thought I'd share it with a broader audience. They're all podcasts I've covered over the last few years, but are all still great listens, so feel free to share this episode with anyone you know who might find it useful. Now, I'm just going to bang quickly through the podcasts, basically just reading through the email I sent out to family and friends. But the list, including direct links to all 24 podcasts, should be on your screen. So just listen and then go and check the links for anything that caught your interest. Okay, here goes, and I will mark the gap between each podcast with a sound like this. Okay, first up is The Daily from the New York Times. Now, I've talked about this podcast a lot. It's a pretty good deep dive with expert input into the major topic in the news each weekday. And of course, lately, that's been COVID-19. Rumble with Michael Moore. So this year, Michael Moore has dumped film and TV making in favour of regular podcasts aimed at getting rid of Trump. Though, listen to his latest episodes for his unvarnished take on the COVID-19 situation. Making Sense with Sam Harris. Download some heavy-duty philosophical discussions with neuroscientist Sam Harris and guests. Here's the Thing with Alec Baldwin. Trawl the episode list for some very good and interesting insider-style chats between Alec Baldwin and his celebrity pals. Long Distance Call. Each episode is a listen-in on a weekly call between Australian journalist Geraldine Doogue in Sydney and her daughter Eliza Harvey living as an expat in Lebanon. Serial Season 1. This is the poster child of podcasts. If you've never listened to Serial Season 1, and there's still a few of you out there, now's the time to binge it. Desert Island Discs. Each episode, a celebrity or notable person talks about the 8 songs they'd take with them if cast away to a desert island. It's a great way to get a different perspective on people you've probably heard of in the media and to discover or rediscover new music. The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. This is one of the longest-running podcasts out there, weekly for over 15 years. Listen and learn how to think critically against all the incoming bullshit. It's like if learning a martial art is self-defense for your body, then learning to think critically is self-defense for your brain. That Peter Crouch podcast. It's a British podcast that's gone gangbusters because of its funny locker room type banter from celebrity English footballer Peter Crouch and his mates. And you definitely don't have to be into soccer at all to get a laugh out of this one. Moonrise, a long but remarkable series on the real story behind the moon landing, and it's not the story that you think you know. I highly recommend this one if you're looking for a slow burn podcast series to truly immerse yourself in. 99% Invisible. Go scroll the episode list for seriously great stories about how design is built into so many aspects of our lives that we hardly notice. In other words, it's become 99% invisible. Even if you think you know the 99% Invisible podcast, just go back and check the episode list. There are hundreds there and probably plenty of good ones you haven't listened to yet. Better Than Yesterday with Osher Gunsberg. Australian TV host Osher Gunsberg packs away the TV persona and becomes a real and interesting person on his podcast. There's plenty of good interviews with mainly but not exclusively Australians of interest. Revisionist History, hosted by Malcolm Gladwell, and very Malcolm Gladwell-esque in the everything you thought you knew is wrong kind of way, but plenty of thought-provoking episodes that are also fairly entertaining. I've stuck a specific link to what I thought was one of the best episodes on the notes I've put on your phone screen, so maybe use that as your entry point to Revisionist History. Bowery Boys. If you've got any interest in New York City and its history, especially the way the history has left its mark on what you can see around the city today, you'll love this podcast. Scroll the episode list to pick off the most interesting stories. Disgraceland, true stories of rock stars behaving badly, from the Rolling Stones to A$AP Rocky. Inside the Big Day Out, the story of the rise and fall of the world's biggest touring music festival. Stephen Fry's 7 Deadly Sins. So this one's very Stephen Fry, and it's what it says on the pack. In each episode, Stephen Fry explores one of the 7 deadly sins. WTF with Mark Maron, one of the original long-form interview podcasts and still going strong, hosted by Mark from his suburban garage studio. Another one to scroll the episode list for interviews that catch your interest. Soderjerker on songwriting. Strange name, but great inside the industry style chats with brilliant songwriters including Paul McCartney, Sting, Neil Sedaka, Carol Bayer-Sayer, Neil Finn, Suzanne Vega, Billy Bragg, Rufus Wainwright, Joan Armatrading, Joe Jackson, Paul Simon, Alicia Keys, Colin Hay, Cat Stevens, Noel Gallagher, Dido, James Blunt, and many, many, many more. Internet History Podcast. If you're familiar with the dial-up modem sound, yep, that's the one. Then you'll find plenty of episodes here. If nothing else, check out the episode on the surprising story of the MP3 and what Suzanne Vega had to do with it. I've included a specific link to that episode on your screen. Hit Parade, a great ongoing series explaining the industrial musical complex manipulating the top 100 music charts. Brought to you by great stories you didn't know behind the brands you know well. Check out the episode on the surprising story behind the champagne brand Veuve Clicquot, or the sleazy history of the TGI Fridays fast food chain. Links to both these episodes, as well as a link to the main feed for Brought to You By, are on your screen. Conversations, an ABC Australia radio show, also put out as a podcast. Hundreds of great conversations to troll through with interesting people from Australia and around the world. And finally, S-Town, a brilliant, weird and true look at a life lived in a small town. A podcast classic and 7 episodes to binge on. Okay, there you go. 24 podcasts to check out. As I said, links to all of them are on your screen. And don't forget to share this episode with anyone who could be interested. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening.